when Eli Carter opened his door that stormy night. He never knew that one small act of kindness would bring 70 angry warriors to his doorstep the next morning. The rain was falling hard. The wind howled across the wide, empty Texas plains. Eli's small wooden cabin stood alone, a single light glowing through the storm. He was just finishing his supper, a piece of cornbread and beans, when he heard a soft knock. It was weak, almost lost in the thunder. He waited. Then came another knock, faster, trembling. Eli reached for his rifle by the wall and walked to the door. He opened it carefully, and there she was, a young Comanche girl, no older than 15, soaked from the rain, shaking from the cold. Her long dark hair was tangled, and her feet were bare. She had cuts on her arms and fear in her eyes. Eli could see she had been running for a long time. He didn't know from who or what. He only knew she needed help. "Please," she whispered in a small voice. "Help me." Eli hesitated. He knew the danger. Helping a Comanche girl could mean war. But his heart wouldn't let him turn her away. So he opened the door wide and said, "Come in, girl. You're safe here." He gave her dry clothes, a blanket, and food. She barely ate, just kept glancing toward the window like someone who feared being found. When Eli asked her name, she said softly, "Taya." Eli smiled kindly. "Rest now, Taya. You're safe under my roof." But deep down, he wasn't sure that was true. When the sun rose the next morning, the sky was clear and calm. Too calm. Eli stepped outside to fetch water from the well. Then he froze. In the distance, the hills moved. Not the hills themselves, but horses. Dozens of them. Warriors, riding fast, their feathers and spears catching the light. Eli's heart dropped. They were surrounding his house from every side. Taya's father, the war chief, had found her. And he had not come alone. Eli ran inside. "Taya," he shouted. The girl stood by the window, tears in her eyes. "My father," she whispered. "He thinks you took me." Eli's hands shook as he loaded his rifle. "Well," he said quietly, "we'd better make him believe otherwise." But it was too late. By midday, Eli's cabin was surrounded. 70 Comanche warriors sat on horseback, their faces painted, bows drawn, their leader standing in front, tall, fierce, and silent. The war chief raised his hand, and the plains went quiet. Only the wind moved. Then he shouted something in his language, a cry of fury that echoed across the land. Eli stood at the door, holding his rifle tight, Taya behind him. He didn't want to fight. He just wanted peace. But peace was far away now. He shouted. "She came here by herself. I didn't harm her." The chief pointed his spear at Eli. "You lie," he said in broken English. "You take my daughter. You die today." Taya cried out and ran forward, standing between them. "No, father. He saved me," she yelled. "He helped me. Please don't hurt him." The warriors murmured among themselves. The chief's eyes narrowed. He looked at Eli, a stranger, then at his daughter, who stood shaking in front of him. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, the chief lowered his spear. He said something to his men, and they began to circle closer. Eli's heart pounded. Was it mercy or an attack? Before Eli could move, 2 warriors grabbed Taya, pulling her away. She screamed and fought. "Father, stop," she cried. "He's a good man." Eli tried to step forward, but the chief raised his spear again. "You stay," he said coldly. "If you follow, we burn your house." Eli didn't move. He just watched as they rode off, taking Taya with them. Dust and thunder filled the air. When the sound of hooves finally faded, silence fell again over the plains. That night, Eli sat alone by the fire, his house still standing but his heart heavy. He had done the right thing, but in the wild country, the right thing didn't always bring peace. The next morning, Eli saw something strange. On his porch lay a small bundle wrapped in leather. Inside was a feather and a carved wooden bead. It was Taya's. He looked out across the plains and saw a lone rider far in the distance, watching him. It was the war chief. And before turning his horse to leave, the man lifted one hand, a sign of respect. Eli nodded quietly. He understood. Sometimes kindness is misunderstood before it is honored. He closed his door, sat down by the fire, and whispered, "Safe travels, little one." The wind blew gently outside, carrying away the last traces of war. Fifth, and leaving behind the story of a man who sheltered a girl when no one else would. The morning came soft and bright after the heavy rain. The plains stretched wide under the pale sun, shining like a wet mirror. Eli opened his door and stepped out slowly. The air smelled fresh, clean, and calm. Birds were singing again. Everything looked peaceful, but his heart wasn't. He could still remember what he saw last night, the look in the girl's eyes when she said, "Help me." That kind of fear doesn't just go away. Inside the cabin, Taya was still asleep, wrapped tight in the blanket he had given her. She looked calm now, but her face carried marks of worry. Her small hands were bruised, and her feet had scratches. She must have walked a long way in the dark, maybe through the woods or across the river. Eli made breakfast, beans, bread, and hot coffee. The smell woke her. She sat up slowly, blinking, her hair messy and dry now. He smiled kindly. "Morning," he said. She looked at him, not sure what to say. Her English was broken, but she tried. "You helped me." "Thank you." Eli nodded. "You were freezing last night. You can stay here till it's safe." She lowered her head. "Safe, not easy," she said softly. Eli frowned. "Who hurt you, girl?" She hesitated. Her hands trembled as she picked at the bread. "Men, bad men. White men. Took my horse. Shoot my brother." Eli's eyes hardened. He sat back slowly. "Bandits." She nodded. "They come to camp. Kill. I run." Her eyes filled with tears. She tried to hide. Eli took a deep breath. He understood now. She had run from trouble, not caused it. But if she ran from white bandits, and he was a white man helping her, that meant trouble for him too. The Comanche would not believe he was innocent. They would see only that a white man had their daughter. Still, he couldn't let her go back alone. He stood up and said, "You'll rest here today. I'll figure something out." She looked scared again. "They find me," she said quietly. Eli glanced out the window toward the wide, empty land. "No one's finding you here," he said. But his tone wasn't as sure as his words. Later that morning, he took his horse to the back field to check the fence line. The ground was muddy and soft, his boots sinking deep. As he walked, he noticed something strange. Hoof prints. Fresh ones. Not his horse's. He knelt down and touched the soil. It was still damp, the print sharp. At least 4 riders, maybe more. His heart beat faster. He looked toward the far ridge, and for just a second, he thought he saw movement, like a shadow crossing the sun. He blinked. Nothing. Just the wind bending the tall grass. Eli turned back to the cabin, quickening his steps. When he entered, Taya was standing by the window, holding her blanket tight. "You see them?" she asked. He stopped. "See who?" "Warriors," she whispered. "My father's men. They look for me." Eli's throat went dry. "How far?" She pointed toward the east. "They come soon." He rubbed his face and thought fast. "All right," he said, steadying himself. "Then we'll be ready." He closed the shutters, moved the horses to the back shed, and packed some food. "If they come, we talk first," he told her. "No one shoots unless they shoot first." Taya nodded slowly, though her hands shook. "My father, he think you take me. He kill you." Eli looked at her and smiled a little, though there was worry behind it. "Well, let's hope he listens before he acts." As the sun went down, the wind picked up again. The plains grew quiet. Too quiet. Eli sat by the window, his rifle leaning against the wall. Taya stayed close, staring into the firelight. Far in the distance, faint and low, came a sound. Drums. Slow, steady, deep. Eli stood up. "You hear that?" Taya nodded, her eyes full of fear. "They come." Eli looked out into the dark and saw faint orange lights moving on the far ridge. Torches. His heart sank. He whispered, "Lord help us." Outside, the drums grew louder. The riders were coming, and by morning, the plains would no longer be quiet. The sound came before the sight, a low rumble rolling across the wide Texas plains. Eli Carter had heard that sound before. It was not thunder. It was horses. Many of them. The wooden floor under his boots trembled. He walked to the porch and looked out. The morning sun was just climbing up, spreading a pale gold light across the land. Far away, small dark dots moved across the ridge. They were riders, and they were coming fast. Behind him, Taya stood at the door holding her blanket close. Her eyes were full of fear. "My father," she whispered. "He comes." Eli kept his eyes on the riders. He counted quickly in his mind. There were too many. Dozens. Maybe 70. He took a slow breath and said, "Get inside." She didn't move. "He think you steal me," she said. "He hate white men." Eli turned to her. "I didn't steal you, Taya. I helped you. And I'll tell him that myself." She shook her head, her voice small. "He no listen. He kill first." Eli's jaw tightened. He looked at her kindly but firmly. "Go inside and stay low." She obeyed. He watched her run back into the cabin and close the door. Then he stepped off the porch, standing in the open field. He didn't want to fight, but he wasn't going to hide either. The riders came closer. The sound grew louder, pounding hooves, snorting horses, men shouting in Comanche words. Their war paint shone red and black, their feathers whipping in the wind. Spears, bows, and rifles glinted in the morning light. They spread out fast, circling his cabin in a wide ring. 70 warriors surrounded him completely. Eli stood still, his rifle resting across his arm, not raised. His heart beat hard, but his face stayed calm. Then one rider broke from the circle and rode forward. He was older, broad-shouldered, wearing a bear-claw necklace. His hair was braided tight, and his face was painted with white lines. Even before he spoke, Eli knew this was Taya's father, the war chief. The chief stopped 10 feet away. He sat tall on his horse, looking down at Eli with cold, angry eyes. For a long time, no one said a word. The wind moved between them. The horses snorted. Dust rose in slow clouds. Then the chief spoke, his voice deep and sharp. "You take my daughter." Eli shook his head. "No. She came to me. Alone. She was hurt and scared. I gave her food and shelter." The chief's eyes narrowed. "Lies." He lifted his spear and pointed it toward the cabin. "You keep her. You touch her. You die." Eli's grip on his rifle tightened. He didn't want to fight, but he couldn't run. "She's inside," he said calmly. "She can tell you the truth." The chief signaled with his hand. 2 warriors dismounted and started toward the door. Eli took one step forward. "No one goes in there till she comes out," he said firmly. The warriors stopped, glancing back at the chief. The chief glared at Eli. "You give her, or we burn your house," he said that Eli's voice stayed steady. "She's not a prisoner. Let her speak." For a long moment, no one moved. Then the cabin door creaked open slowly. Taya stepped out, her hand shaking, her eyes wide. She looked small beside the circle of armed men. "Father," she said softly, "he not take me. I run. He help me." The chief's eyes flickered. His jaw moved, but he said nothing. "He give me food. He save me." The warriors murmured among themselves. Some looked unsure. The chief looked from his daughter to Eli and back again. "Why you stay?" he asked her. "Why not come home?" Taya lowered her head. "I afraid. I think you dead. I see bad men. They kill brother. I run." The chief's hard face cracked slightly. Pain, not anger, showed in his eyes. He turned his horse away for a moment, breathing deep. Then he looked back at Eli. "You soldier?" he asked suddenly. Eli nodded slowly. "Used to be." "You kill my people?" the chief asked. Eli met his gaze. "I fought in war, but not now. I'm done fighting." The chief studied him for a long while, then looked at his daughter again. She was crying quietly. "He saved me, father," she said again, her voice trembling. "He good man." The chief dropped his spear to his side. "You lucky," he said coldly. "If she lie, you die." He raised his hand, and the warriors began to pull back, circling out slowly. But before they left, the chief turned again. "You stay away from our land. Next time, no talk." Eli nodded once. Understood. The riders turned their horses and began to move off in a wave of color and dust. The sound of hooves filled the air again, fading slowly as they rode toward the eastern ridge. Eli stood there until the last one disappeared. When the dust finally settled, he walked back to the porch. Taya was standing there, tears on her face. "They gone," she said weakly. "For now," Eli replied quietly. "But they'll remember this day." He looked out across the wide, empty land, the rising sun bright on his face. He knew this wasn't over. In places like this, peace never lasted long. The sun climbed high, but Eli could not rest. The land was quiet again, yet it did not feel safe. He sat on the porch with his rifle across his lap, his eyes fixed on the far ridge. The Comanche riders were gone, but he knew what warriors like that could do. They never really left. They only disappeared into the land and waited. Inside the cabin, Taya sat by the fire, silent and sad. She had not eaten since morning. Her eyes were swollen from crying. Eli looked through the open door and said gently, "You should eat something." She shook her head. "They angry," she said. "My father no believe me." Eli nodded slowly. "He'll think on it. Maybe he'll come around." She looked at him, her voice soft. "He not forget. Comanche not forget shame." Eli sighed. He knew she was right. For her father, it was not only about his daughter. It was about pride, and the story people would tell. A white man keeping his daughter overnight would sound like an insult, no matter the truth. Eli stood up and checked the sky again. The wind had changed. The air smelled dry and dusty, not like the clean rain from before. It was the kind of wind that carried whispers. Somewhere out there, he felt eyes on him. He walked to the barn and saddled his horse. He didn't plan to run, but he wanted to check the trail. Taya followed him outside. "You go?" she asked, scared. "Just a short ride," he said. "Stay here and keep the door locked. If you hear anyone, don't open it. Not for anyone but me." She nodded, holding her blanket tighter. "You come back." He smiled a little. "Always." Eli rode out slowly, keeping his rifle across his saddle. The plains were wide and open, the grass bending with the wind. For a long while, he saw nothing but sky. Then, as he reached the ridge, he stopped his horse and scanned the distance. That's when he saw them, two riders, still and silent, far off on the hilltop. They were watching his cabin. Eli felt a chill crawl down his neck. He knew they weren't bandits. The paint on their faces gave them away. Comanche scouts. He didn't move. He just watched them. After a few minutes, one of the scouts raised his hand, not in threat, but in warning, then turned his horse and disappeared behind the ridge. The other followed. Eli turned his horse around and rode back fast. When he reached the cabin, Taya ran out to meet him. "What happened?" she asked, her eyes wide. "They're watching," he said quietly. "Your father's men never left." Her face went pale. "They wait." Eli nodded. "They wait to see if I take you somewhere, or if I send for help." She looked down, tears forming again. "I make you in trouble." He touched her shoulder gently. "You didn't. You just needed help. That's all." She looked up at him, her eyes shining with guilt. "Father think bad things. He no forgive." Eli took a deep breath. "Then we'll give him something to forgive." That night, Eli made a small fire outside the cabin. He placed some wood in the center of the open yard and lit it. The orange flames rose into the dark. Then he tied a white cloth to a stick and set it beside the fire, a sign of peace. Taya stood beside him, confused. "What you do?" "Your people understand signs," he said. "Maybe if they see this, they'll know I mean no harm." The fire burned steady and bright. The night wind blew softly. For hours, they waited. Then, just before midnight, Eli saw movement on the ridge again, the faint flicker of torches. Someone was watching the fire. Then, slowly, one torch moved forward, then stopped. Taya whispered, "They see." Eli nodded. "Good. Now we wait." He didn't know if the fire would bring peace or more trouble. But in the wild country, sometimes you had to risk a little hope to survive. As the night deepened, Eli sat beside the fire, his rifle beside him, his eyes never leaving the dark ridge. The land was silent. The danger was not gone. It was just waiting for dawn. Morning came slowly. The fire outside the cabin had burned low, leaving only gray smoke twisting into the sky. Eli had not slept at all. He sat on the porch, his hat low, his rifle leaning beside him. Every sound in the wind made him look up. Taya came out quietly. Her face was tired. "You no sleep?" she asked softly. Eli shook his head. "Didn't plan to." He looked out toward the ridge again. The torches were gone, but he knew eyes were still watching. Taya sat beside him. The silence stretched. Then she said in a small voice, "My father come today." Eli turned to her. "How do you know?" She pointed to the smoke rising above the hills. "That is his sign. He come alone." Eli stared at the smoke. It was thin and steady, a straight gray line against the morning sky. He nodded. "Then we wait." An hour passed. The wind was calm. The plain seemed peaceful, but Eli's stomach was tight. He knew how these meetings could go. One wrong word, and everything could fall apart. Then he heard hooves, slow, steady, one horse only. He stood. Taya stood too. Over the ridge came her father, the Comanche chief. He rode alone, no spear in hand, just a single rifle slung across his back. His face was stern, unreadable. Eli stepped off the porch and walked forward. They met halfway, the fire smoke curling between them. Neither spoke at first. Finally, the chief said, "You still here?" Eli nodded. "I didn't run." The chief looked around the cabin, his eyes sharp. "You light fire. Why?" "It's peace," Eli said simply. "To show I mean no harm." The chief grunted softly. "Many white men say peace. Few mean it." Eli looked him straight in the eyes. "I mean it." The two men stood in silence. The only sound was the wind moving through the grass. Then the chief said something that made Eli's chest tighten. "My son dead." Eli frowned. "Your son?" The chief nodded slowly. "Taya's brother. He died 2 nights ago. Shot by white men. Same men who chase her." Eli's heart sank. He understood now. That was why the girl ran. That was why the chief was full of rage. "I'm sorry," Eli said quietly. The chief looked at him sharply. "You sorry? You fight with white soldiers before. Maybe you kill our sons too." Eli didn't deny it. "I was a soldier once," he said. "But not their kind. Not anymore. I left that life behind." The chief looked at him a long time, then said, "Why help her?" Eli took a deep breath. "Because she needed help. Because no one else would." The chief said nothing. He looked past Eli toward the cabin, where Taya stood watching from the doorway. Her eyes met his, and she stepped forward slowly. "Father," she said softly, her voice shaking. "He good. He saved me." The chief's hard expression softened just a little. "You tell truth?" he asked. She nodded quickly. "Yes, father. He not hurt me. He give me food, fire, blanket. He pray for me." The chief's head turned sharply at that. "He pray." Eli nodded once. "I asked the Lord to keep her safe. That's all." The chief studied him again, searching his face. Then he said quietly, "You believe in your God. We believe in ours. Maybe both see what happened." Eli said nothing. The chief rode closer, stopping only a few steps away. "You brave," he said. "Most white men run. You stay." Eli replied, "Running don't solve much out here." The chief looked around, then lowered his voice. "Warriors watch from far hills. They want fight. I stop them, but they wait to know if you lie." Eli's jaw tightened. "Then tell them the truth." The chief looked at his daughter again. Then he nodded once. "Maybe I will." He turned his horse to leave, then stopped and said, "Tomorrow, I come again. You tell story of men who kill my son. You saw them." Eli thought for a moment. "No, but I might know where they went. I can help you find them." The chief's eyes narrowed. "Why help me?" Eli said simply, "Because it's right." The chief stared at him for a long time, then finally nodded. "Tomorrow," he said. Then he turned his horse and rode off toward the hills. Eli watched him go until he disappeared behind the ridge. Taya ran to him. "He no kill you," she said, half smiling through tears. Eli gave a small nod. "Not today." He looked out across the plains again, where the smoke of the chief's signal still hung in the air. The worst might be over, but something told him This was only the beginning. The sun was going down, and the sky turned orange. Eli walked with his horse beside him. Chief Tahoma and 2 Comanche scouts rode in front. Taya rode behind them. She looked at her father a lot, trying to understand what he was thinking. They were following the bad men who hurt Taya's brother. The ground showed horse tracks leading toward a big canyon. Eli felt worried. He knew this trip was dangerous. Chief Tahoma stopped his horse and held up his hand. Everyone stopped right away. Tahoma pointed to the dirt. Eli went down to look. There was a horseshoe print that was broken on one side. It matched the trail they had seen before. Eli said, "They are close." Tahoma said, "Yes. They will stop near water when night comes. We must find them before the moon comes up." Eli nodded, but something felt strange. He looked far behind them. He saw a man sitting on a dark horse, hiding in the grass. The man did not move. Eli pointed. "Is that your scout?" he asked. Chief Tahoma looked and shook his head. "No." The man on the dark horse turned and quickly rode away into trees. Eli knew who it was. His name was Jeb Carver. Jeb used to work with Eli on a ranch. They were friends before. But now Jeb was angry, mean, and greedy. He also liked Taya a long time ago. He wanted her to choose him. But she did not. Eli and Jeb had fought once because of this. Eli thought Jeb went far away. But now he was back. And he was watching. When night came, they reached the top of the canyon. Down below, there was a small fire. They saw the bad men sitting around the fire and laughing. They did not know anyone was looking at them. Eli and Chief Tahoma lay on their stomachs to stay low. They counted the men. There were 5. They looked strong and angry. Chief Tahoma whispered, "We will get closer when they sleep." Taya held onto Eli's arm. She was scared. Eli looked at her and whispered, "I will keep you safe." Chief Tahoma saw them and frowned, but he said nothing. Suddenly, they heard a stick snap behind them. Someone was close. Eli turned fast. He saw a shadow, a tall man holding a rifle. It was Jeb. He smiled a scary smile. "Well, well," he said softly. "Looks like I am not the only one chasing those men." Eli stood up, angry. "Jeb, go home. This has nothing to do with you." Jeb shook his head. "Everything has to do with me. Those men promised me gold. And if I help them catch the Comanche chief's daughter, I get even more." Taya gasped. Eli stepped in front of her to block Jeb's view. Chief Tahoma pulled out his knife. The fire below them cracked loudly. The laughter of the bad men echoed up the canyon walls. The danger was now behind them and in front of them. They were stuck in the middle, and the night had only just begun. The night grew colder. The wind whistled through the canyon, carrying the sound of the outlaws' laughter below. Eli stood very still, facing Jeb. Chief Tahoma's hand gripped his knife. Taya clung to her blanket, her eyes wide with fear. Jeb grinned like he had already won. "You think you're some kind of hero, Eli," he said. "Sheltering that girl, standing up to her father, now sneaking out here with him like you're part of his tribe." He spat on the ground. "You don't belong with them. You never did." Eli kept his voice low. "Jeb, I'm not looking for trouble. Leave while you still can." But Jeb just laughed. "You always talk calm, don't you? Just like before, when she chose to trust you and not me." His eyes flashed toward Taya. "Maybe her father should know how close you two have gotten." Eli's jaw tightened. "Don't." Chief Tahoma slowly stepped forward. "This man," he said in his heavy voice, "is trouble. He helps killers. He brings danger." Jeb smirked. "You don't scare me, old man." Before anyone could move, Jeb fired his gun in the air. The loud shot echoed through the canyon. The outlaws below jumped to their feet. They grabbed their guns and looked up the hill. Eli shouted, "Jeb, you fool." Jeb fired again, this time toward the sky, laughing. "Let's see who survives now." Then he ran off into the darkness. The outlaws below started shooting toward the ridge. Bullets hit the dirt near them. Chief Tahoma pushed Taya down behind a rock. "Stay down," he said. Eli crawled beside them and fired one shot back, just to scare the outlaws off. The gunfire echoed, then slowly stopped. The men below didn't climb up. They stayed close to their fire, shouting angry words. Taya trembled. "He bring them. she said softly. Eli nodded, breathing hard. Yeah, he wants chaos. He wants everyone to fight. Chief Tahoma looked toward Eli. We go now, he said. Before moonrise. They will hunt us. They moved quietly through the dark, leaving the canyon behind. The horses made soft thuds on the ground. After a while, the sound of gunfire faded away, but Taya couldn't stop looking over her shoulder. He follow us, she whispered. I feel it. Eli looked around. He didn't see anyone, but he trusted her sense. If he's following, we'll deal with him. They rode through the night, stopping only when they reached a small stream. Chief Tahoma ordered everyone to rest. No fire, he said. Smoke tells the enemy where you are. Eli nodded. He tied the horses and sat near Taya. She was quiet for a long time. Then she asked, Why you help me? My people hurt you before. Eli looked at her. Because what's right is still right, no matter who's hurt you. You were cold, scared, and alone. I couldn't turn you away. She smiled a little. You have strong heart. He chuckled softly. Some would say foolish. Chief Tahoma pretended not to listen, but he was. For the first time, his face softened. He saw something different in Eli. Not just a man, but someone who respected his daughter's life. The night was quiet again. But far behind them, in the dark hills, a single shadow moved slowly through the grass. Jeb. His eyes burned with hate and jealousy. He watched the three of them resting by the stream and whispered to himself, You'll regret this, Eli. You'll all regret this. And then he vanished into the night. Morning came slowly. The sun rose over the wide plains, soft light spilling over the tall grass. The air was cool and quiet, but Eli couldn't relax. He hadn't slept at all. He kept watching the ridge, waiting for movement. Chief Tahoma was awake too. He sat beside his horse, sharpening his knife. Taya was still asleep, wrapped in her blanket by the stream. For a moment, she looked peaceful, like the world was safe again. Eli wished it were true then. The sound of horses came, faint but steady. Eli stood up and listened carefully. He counted the hoofbeats. Not one, not too many. Maybe 20, maybe more. Chief Tahoma's eyes narrowed. My men, he said slowly. But then his face changed, hard, suspicious. Or maybe not. Eli grabbed his rifle and looked around. What if Jeb found them first? Before Tahoma could answer, riders appeared over the ridge, Comanche warriors, their horses galloping fast. Dust rose behind them like smoke. The one in front carried a spear with red cloth tied to it. That red meant war. Taya woke up at the noise. She stood quickly. Father, what's happening? Tahoma didn't answer. He climbed on his horse and rode forward. Eli followed behind him, holding his rifle low, not wanting to look like a threat. When the riders reached them, they surrounded the small camp in a circle. The leader, a tall warrior with scars on his cheek, shouted, Tahoma, you bring white man into our hunt. He leads trouble here. Tahoma held up his hand. He saved my daughter's life. The warrior's eyes burned. Then why is there gunfire near our land last night? Why do white men follow our trail now? Eli's stomach sank. Jeb Dottie stepped forward. It wasn't me. A man named Jeb Carver. He shot first. He warned the killers we were near. The warrior spat on the ground. White men always blame other white men. Tahoma looked between Eli and the warrior. He was torn. We go find truth, he said firmly. If he lies, I kill him myself. Taya gasped. Father, no. He tell truth. But her father didn't answer. He turned to Eli. Mount your horse. You ride with us. Eli didn't argue. He saddled his horse and followed them as they rode back toward the canyon. The dust rose again behind them when they reached the ridge. Smoke still rose from where the fire had been. The bad men were gone, but something else was there. On the ground near the fire was a body. Eli climbed down, heart pounding. He turned the body over. It wasn't one of the outlaws. It was one of the Comanche scouts who had been with them the night before. He had been shot in the chest. The scarred warrior looked at Eli with cold eyes. Your kind did this. Eli shook his head. No, it was Jeb. I told you. He was out here. He wants to start a fight between us. Tahoma knelt beside the body. his face dark with anger and pain. "This man was my nephew," he said quietly. "If you lie to me, your life ends today." Eli met his eyes. "I don't lie, but I'll help you find who did this." Tahoma studied him for a long time. Then he stood. "We ride north," he said. "If this Jeb lives, I will make him speak with fire." The warriors mounted up. Eli and Taya followed. As they rode, the wind picked up again. The plains felt colder behind them, in the canyon shadows. Jeb stood hidden among rocks. He watched the riders leave, a sneer on his face. "Go ahead," he whispered. "Chase ghosts. By the time you're done, the white towns will hear that Eli Harper killed a Comanche." He kicked his horse and rode toward the nearest fort, to spread the lie that would turn both sides against each other. And as Eli rode north, unaware of what Jeb was doing, the war he feared was already beginning. The sun climbed higher as they rode north. Eli, Taya, and Chief Tahoma led the group of warriors through the open plains. Everyone was quiet. The land was calm, but Eli could feel something bad coming, far away. At the army fort near the small town, Jeb rode in fast. He jumped off his horse and shouted to the soldiers, "A white man named Eli Harper has been taken by the Comanche. They killed his men. They'll attack soon." The captain, a tall man with a red beard, frowned. "Are you sure?" Jeb nodded quickly. "Yes, sir. I saw them myself. They killed a scout and burned a camp. You must act now." The captain didn't wait. He called for his men. Within minutes, 15 soldiers mounted their horses and rode out, heading straight toward Eli's cabin. Back in the plains, Eli and the Comanche reached a dry riverbed. They saw new tracks, horses, lots of them. Eli jumped down and touched the ground. "These are from this morning," he said. Tahoma's eyes darkened. "Soldiers." Taya looked scared. "They come for us?" Eli nodded slowly. "They think we're the enemy." Tahoma looked around. "Jeb." Eli's voice grew tight. "Yes, he's behind this. He wants everyone fighting." Tahoma took a deep breath. "Then we stop him. Together." They followed the trail. After a while, they reached a small hill overlooking Eli's cabin. From there, they saw everything. Soldiers surrounding the cabin, rifles ready, shouting orders. Smoke started to rise. Taya gasped. "They burn your home." Eli's heart broke. That cabin was all he had left, the place where he helped her, where peace had started. Tahoma turned to him. "We go down there. We show them truth." Eli shook his head. "If we ride down like this, they'll shoot. They think you're here to fight." He looked at Taya. "Stay behind me." Then he raised a white cloth and tied it to his rifle barrel. He started walking down the hill slowly, holding the flag high. The soldiers aimed their guns. The captain shouted, "Stop right there." Eli called out, "I'm Eli Harper. I'm not your enemy. You've been lied to." The captain frowned. "Where's the Comanche girl?" Eli pointed behind him. "She's safe. Her father and I found the Real killers. The man who told you this, Jeb Carver. He's the one causing all this." The captain lowered his gun slightly. "Where is he?" A voice shouted from the other side. "Right here." Jeb stepped out from behind a wagon, holding a pistol. "Don't believe him. He's working with them." Before anyone could move, Jeb fired at Eli. The bullet hit the ground near his feet. The soldiers panicked, and the Comanche warriors started riding in from the hill. Shouting filled the air. Eli ducked to the side and fired once, not to kill, but to stop Jeb. The shot hit Jeb's arm, and he dropped his pistol, screaming. The captain shouted, "Hold your fire! Hold your fire!" Everything stopped for a moment. The soldiers froze. The Comanche riders pulled their horses to a halt. Dust and smoke filled the air. Eli walked up to Jeb, who was on the ground, holding his arm. "You lied," Eli said. "You almost started a war." Jeb looked up, angry and afraid. "She should have been mine," he hissed. "You ruined everything." Eli shook his head. "No, Jeb. You ruined yourself." Chief Tahoma rode down slowly with Taya. The captain turned to them. "You've been wronged," he said quietly. "We'll leave your land alone." Tahoma looked at Eli for a long time. Then he said, This man is brave. He helped my daughter. He stopped blood from flowing." The Comanche warriors nodded in agreement. One by one, they turned their horses and began to ride away. Eli stood there, watching them go. His cabin was burned, but his heart felt calm. Taya stood beside him, holding his arm. "You lost your home," she said softly. He smiled faintly. "Home isn't just wooden walls, Taya. It's where peace lives." Tahoma looked back once more and said, "You have our respect, Eli Harper. The land will remember you." Then they disappeared into the horizon. Eli looked up at the sky. The plains were quiet again. The war that could have started had ended before it began, because one man chose kindness over fear. That he took a deep breath, the smell of smoke still in the air, and said to himself, "Maybe that's enough." And with that, he turned, picked up his hat, and started rebuilding.